Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to talk quickly about drug testing and performance enhancing drugs in arm wrestling. So, if arm wrestling ever wants to get to the mainstream level, there would have to be a comprehensive drug testing program in place. Currently, there's no drug testing across the board. We've got a super match coming up with Ryan Bowen and RVJ, and they have agreed to do drug testing, but that's something that they've stipulated themselves between each other. So currently, arm wrestling is not at that level where we have a mainstream audience, where we have a level of people around the world that are competing in under a certain sports league that is all under one regulatory body. To be able to get to that level, if we wanted to reach that mainstream level, there would have to be a health and safety concern, which would be what are the regulatory systems that are in place to look after the health and safety of the athletes. One of those being that we need to have a drug testing policy in place. Me personally, what do I think about that? Well, I can see the argument that people say, well, if we have an untested league, we're going to have the biggest and strongest guys that are competing in that, and it's going to attract the most people watching it. You want to see the biggest, you want to see the strongest guys competing across the board. Problem with that is if you're looking to make a professional league, if you're looking to get into the mainstream audience where you've got mainstream sponsors and regulatory bodies that are stepping in and looking at what are you doing to look after the health and safety of your athletes, and you say we don't have any drug testing in place, then they're probably going to say, well, we don't actually want to be involved in your organization. We don't want to help you with your sponsorships. We don't want to sanction your events. We don't want to host your events. And I liken it to the UFC. I mean, when the UFC first came out, they didn't have any rules, or there was barely any rules whatsoever. There was two guys basically beating the crap out of each other in the cage, and eventually the sport got banned. The sport of MMA. They really struggled. Ended up selling the organization to Dana White and Fertitta Brothers, as they were not able to get shown on TV. They couldn't get pay-per-view events happening. They couldn't get a TV audience. They couldn't get booked in most venues because it was banned in a lot of the states. So when Dana White and the Fertitta brothers took over, they hired Mark Ratner, who was an expert on regulatory body systems, and he created them a system of rules and regulations, one of which was a drug testing program. Then they were able to apply to the athletic commissions, and they say, we have these rules in place, and they were able to get sanctioned events sanctioned by the athletic commissions, and eventually they went state by state and they worked their way through the country, and they got all 50 states on board, and they're able to hold their events, and now they are a mainstream sport. They would never have reached that level without those regulatory systems in place, one of which being a drug testing system. And in fact, the UFC at the moment has probably one of the strictest drug testing programs in place with the USADA. They've got whereabouts testing, and they've got all sorts of things happening with that. So I'm not saying that arm wrestling will ever get to that level. I hope that it does get to a mainstream audience, but for it to be able to reach that point, it has to have a regulatory system, and one of those things, it will be a drug testing program. And that's not that it's me saying that, but if you look at any major sport across the world, they will have that system in place, and the reason being for the health and safety of the athletes that are involved in the sport. Thanks.